I was 39 when I let myself believe in someone again. That's the part that still makes me feel embarrassed, I guess. Not because I'm ashamed of wanting love, but because I remember how careful I thought I was being. I remember sitting on my bed one night, looking at myself in the mirror, thinking, okay, I'm not 25. I'm not going to fall for charm. I'm not going to ignore red flags. I'm going to be smart this time. And then I met Ryan. I'm talking to you like you're sitting across from me because that's how it feels in my head. Like I'm finally saying it out loud to someone who's not going to interrupt me or tell me I should have known better. Ryan was younger than me, not by a little, by enough that I told him up front on the first date, just so you know I'm older than you. He smiled like it didn't matter at all. He said he'd always dated women in their 30s and 40s, said women his age were, I don't know, immature. He used the word unsophisticated, which makes me cringe now because it was so obviously designed to flatter me. But at the time it worked because I wanted to feel like I was still somebody a man could choose. We met because he was a customer at the store where I worked, a men's clothing store in Los Angeles. I'd help him pick shirts, ties, suits. He always dressed well, always smelled like clean soap and cologne, not cheap cologne, that kind that's subtle and expensive and makes you lean in a little. He had this way of looking at me like I wasn't just the woman folding sweaters behind a counter, like he saw me. I'd been divorced for years, but my last relationship after the divorce had ended in this slow, humiliating fade, like being erased, like someone just quietly turning the volume down on you until you realize you've been talking to yourself. So when Ryan started coming in more often, lingering, asking me questions that weren't about clothes, where I grew up, what I liked to do, what music I listened to, I felt my chest get tight in that way it gets when you're trying not to hope too much. He asked me out to dinner, and I said yes. I can still picture him that night. Dark blazer, no tie, sleeves pushed up, watch on his wrist. He looked like a man who had his life together. He was an attorney. He told me about his job, his caseload, the way the courts worked. I didn't understand half of it, but I liked listening to him. I liked that he seemed confident. The thing is, he wasn't just confident, he was attentive. Like he was studying me, like everything I said mattered. When he asked if I'd ever want to live with someone again, he didn't say it like a trap. He said it like he was curious about who I was, what I wanted. I went home that night and stood in my kitchen in the dark, still wearing my shoes, and I just let myself smile. It felt like something was starting. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other a lot. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, dinners, movies, long drives. He'd call me in the middle of the day just to ask how my shift was going. It was that kind of romance that makes your friends say, I love this for you. And you laugh like you're not terrified it could disappear. I told him things I hadn't told anyone in a long time, and he told me he loved me. Not right away, but sooner than I expected. And when he said it, he looked straight at me like it was true and steady and not a line. So I believed him. I know. There was this one thing, though, one thing that didn't sit right. I realized, maybe a couple weeks in, that I didn't have his home phone number. I had his pager number, a pager. That should date this story, I guess, but it's part of it. He gave me a pager number, and he'd always call me from his office or his car. One night I was running late, and I wanted to let him know. I stood outside my apartment building, keys in my hand, and I realized I didn't have a way to just call his house. So I asked him, just casually. He hesitated for a second. Not long, but long enough. He said he had roommates, said the phone situation was weird, that sometimes people didn't answer, said I should just page him and he'd call back. I remember laughing like it was no big deal, but inside something pinched. I didn't push it then because I didn't want to be that woman. The suspicious one, the one who ruins something good by needing too much reassurance. Later, when I brought it up again, he finally gave me his home number. He acted like he was doing it to make me feel better. I told myself, see, he's listening. A few nights after that, I called him. I wasn't calling to check up on him. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't calling to check up on him. I want to be clear about that. I was calling because I was excited. My coworker was having this party and I wanted Ryan there. I wanted to show him off, honestly. A woman answered. Just a woman. Calm voice. Like she lived there. My hand went cold around the phone. I hung up immediately. I stood there with the dial tone in my ear, feeling stupid, like I'd done something wrong just by calling. When he called me back later, I told him, I said, a woman answered your phone. There was a pause. Then he said, "Oh, yeah, he lived with a woman, but she was just a roommate. Totally platonic. She was from Guatemala." He said that specifically, and he was helping her out. He said they'd lived together for 3 years. 3 years. That's a long time to live with someone and be totally platonic. But again, I didn't want to be that woman. I didn't want to sound jealous. I didn't want to sound insecure. So I asked questions gently. What's her name? How did you meet? Why didn't you tell me? He had answers. Quick ones, smooth ones. He said he didn't mention it because he knew it would sound strange and he didn't want me to misunderstand. He said he cared about her like family. He said she was going through a hard time and he was being a good person. And I remember thinking, that's what I want, a good person. So I accepted it and we kept seeing each other and it got deeper. That's where it starts to hurt when I say it out loud. Because once you accept one thing, you start accepting the next thing. He'd be really intense with me, not in a scary way, in a romantic way. He'd look at me and tell me I was different from anyone he'd ever met. He'd say he could see a future with me. I'd wake up on a Saturday morning and see his jacket hanging over a chair and feel that warm, stupid little bloom in my chest. Except he never stayed the night, not once. At first, I didn't notice. Because we were taking things slow, I told myself. Or because he had work early, or because he lived across town, or because he was just considerate. He always had a reason. I've got a deposition in the morning. I have to be at court early. I've got a meeting. He'd say it with this apologetic tone, like he wished he could stay, and I'd pretend I didn't care. But I did care. I cared because I wanted to feel chosen, fully chosen, not like a hidden part of someone's life. So one night I asked him. I remember exactly where we were standing. My kitchen, the yellow light over the sink, the hum of my refrigerator, the smell of garlic from dinner still hanging in the air. I said, "Why don't you ever stay over?" He went quiet, and in that quiet my stomach dropped. He looked nervous. Not guilty exactly, just like a man calculating. Then he said he couldn't do that to her. To who? I said, to who? And he said, to the girl I'm living with. And the way he said it, it wasn't my roommate, it wasn't my friend, it was the girl I'm living with. Like I should already know what that meant. I stared at him and I felt my face go hot. I said, "Are you two a couple?" He didn't answer right away. He stammered. He did that thing where a person tries to talk without saying anything. Like their mouth is moving, but they're not giving you truth yet. And then he finally said, "Yes, yes." And I swear to you, for a second, the room tilted like I was on a boat. I remember gripping the counter because I suddenly felt unsteady in my own body. I asked him how long. He said they'd been together for years, years. So everything he'd said to me, every "I love you," every future plan, every "you're the one," it was all said while he was living with someone else. He started talking fast after that. He said it wasn't like that. He said he loved me. He said his relationship with her was complicated. He said he'd been unhappy for a long time. He said he didn't want to hurt anyone. He said he didn't mean for it to go this far. You know what's strange? I don't really remember the exact words after that. Not all of them. What I remember is the feeling, like my brain was trying to protect me by making everything blurry. What I do remember is his face. How he looked at me like I was the problem for asking. Not angry, not even defensive, more like disappointed, like I'd ruined something. And I remember thinking, wait, how am I the one who feels guilty right now? I asked him, so what am I to you? And he said something like, "You're special." Special. That word, I still hate that word because special is what you say when you can't say mine, when you can't say my partner, when you can't say the person I'm building a life with. He tried to hug me. I stepped back. And then, because I'm me, because I've been trained my whole life to be polite and reasonable, I started asking him questions like it was a normal conversation. I asked why he told me he lived with roommates. He said he didn't want to scare me away. I asked why he let me fall in love with him. He said he didn't expect it. I asked if he ever planned to leave her. He said he didn't know. That was the moment, not the confession itself, the "I don't know," because it told me everything. It told me I wasn't a mistake. I wasn't an accident. I was a choice he made again and again every time he came to my apartment and said he loved me and then went home to her. And I realized something else too, and this is hard to admit. I realized how badly I wanted to negotiate. I wanted to bargain. I wanted to say, okay, what if you leave her and we start fresh? What if you choose me now and we pretend the last months didn't happen? I wanted that so badly it made me feel sick. Because when you've been alone a long time, the first real hope you feel, it's not just hope, it's like oxygen. And when someone takes it away, you panic. That night after he left, I sat on my couch with all the lights off. The city was loud outside, cars, sirens, people yelling, but inside my apartment, it was quiet. Heavy quiet, the kind where you can hear the clock ticking and it feels personal. I remember looking at the spot on the rug where his shoes had been earlier and thinking, did I imagine this whole relationship? That's what betrayal does. It makes you doubt your own memory. Over the next few days, he called and texted. He wrote long messages. He said he was sorry. He said he loved me. He said he wanted to be with me. He said he just needed time. Time. I didn't answer at first. Then I did. Because of course I did. I told him I couldn't do this, that he had to end it with her or leave me alone. He said he understood. Then he disappeared for a week. And that week was torture. Not because I missed him exactly, but because my mind kept replaying everything, trying to rewrite it into something that didn't make me feel like a fool. He came back after that week like nothing happened. He showed up at the store. He stood by the ties like he always did, smiling like we were still us. I walked into the back room and my hands were shaking so badly I dropped a stack of shirts. That was when I knew I had to end it. Not for dignity, not for pride, for sanity. Because the way he could switch in and out, the way he could lie and then act normal, it made me feel like the ground wasn't solid. I told him not to come back. I said it calmly. I surprised myself with how calm I sounded. He looked at me like I was overreacting. He said, "You're making this into something it doesn't have to be." And I remember thinking, he's still doing it. He's still trying to make me the problem. After he left, I went to the bathroom at work and I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Not pretty crying, not cinematic crying, just ugly, shaking, silent sobs so nobody would hear. Because what I lost wasn't just him. I lost the version of myself that believed I could be loved without conditions. For a long time after, I kept replaying the early moments. The dinner, the cardigan, the way he listened to me like I mattered. And I kept wondering if any of it was real. I don't know. Maybe it was real to him in the moment, maybe he liked me, maybe he even loved the way I made him feel, but what I know now is that none of that matters if someone is willing to build your hope on top of a lie. The hardest part wasn't the breakup, the hardest part was learning to trust my own instincts again, because there were moments, small ones, when something felt off. The pager, the evasive answers, the never staying over, the way he always kept a part of his life separate. And each time, I talked myself out of it. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was being unfair. I told myself I didn't want to sabotage something good. If I could go back and sit with that version of myself, I wouldn't tell her to be suspicious of everyone. I wouldn't tell her to never fall in love. I'd just tell her one thing. If you feel confused all the time, pay attention to that. Because love doesn't feel like confusion. Not constantly. Not in your gut. Not in that quiet, sick way. Love can be complicated, sure, but it shouldn't make you feel like you're always trying to piece together what's real. That's what I learned. And I learned something else too. I learned that being honest doesn't protect you from liars. I used to believe it did. I used to think if I was clear and direct and truthful, the other person would match that. But that's not how it works. A liar doesn't lie because you didn't ask the right question. They lie because lying works for them. I don't say that to make it sound bleak. It's just true. I'm not angry all the time anymore. Sometimes I'm sad, sometimes I'm numb, sometimes I laugh at myself because honestly, the whole thing is ridiculous. But mostly I feel older, not in a bitter way, just more awake. And if you're listening to this because you've been there, because you were the secret or the special one or the person who got told a story that didn't add up, I just want to say something quietly. You're not crazy. That feeling in your stomach is real. And even if the truth hurts, it hurts less than living inside someone else's lie.